Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Chav Daled. We're going to begin on Chav Daled with Aleph, about 10 lines from the top. We were learning when it comes to paraduma as well as other karbanos, what exactly is the din? Are we chayesh l'revia? Are we concerned potentially that the owner of this paraduma may end up cohabiting with it, which of course is a psul. So we saw on Chav Gimel Amud Aleph that we had a machlokas Rabbi Lezer who apparently is chayish l'revia, and the Rabbanan whole is not chayish l'revia. We said that also explained the stira in yesterday's daf between the Mishnah and the Brisa. So we asked the question, if in fact we're not allowed to buy a paraduma, then how is it shaykh that the famous story of Damba ben Nesina that we were able to buy it? And the answer was Alidi Sirsurs, a middleman was going to buy it, and then we would buy it from him, but not directly from the Akel. So the Gemara continues, Rabbi Lezer chayish Raviyah. Is it true that Rabbi Lezer is not chayish Raviyah? So this is a question on Shiloi that said the reason of Rabbi Lezer is because of, it says kicha, because of Zarah Kosev, that it says by the paraduma that you can't take, which could also mean you can't sell. Vosanya Umbrella Rabbi Lezer Masa, there was a story, we know that Yitaka bought it from him, from Dam Nesina, the Armula Remit Shemoy. Some say it was a different guy's name, but regardless, we see that we're obviously he held that you are allowed to do this. You're going to say that's Raya. We actually saw this, that really normally I am chayesh l'revia. So that how could we have bought the paraduma from this guy? And the answer is because the moment that this animal was born, you can imagine how excited everyone was that you had a paraduma, and we didn't want to take any chances, and therefore because of that, we watched it the entire time. So we just know in this particular instance that this animal, there was no Rabbiya. Rabbi Lezer tart to Islay. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Lezer holds two. Kicha, he holds the Gzer Sakasa, that it says he can't buy it, and also the Chayish Nel Rabbiya. And he's also Chayish for Rabbiya. So now we can understand question 8, which we said yesterday. It says, based on these two reasons, how is it possible that we got the paraduma from Dam Nesina? So Rabbi Lezer is chayish Rabbiya, but the par of Dam Nesina, Yisrael was watching it continuously, and says Ves Ima, also its mother. L'shila Yislei Nikra the Bnei Yisrael Yichublu Akum Upar the Dam Ali De Sirsu Yisrael Lachu. You can't sell it or buy it directly from him, but for the paraduma, but aliyidei sirsur through a middleman, that is allowed. So the Gemara continues like this. So as we alluded to already, that it says that someone was watching this paraduma from the time it was born. Maybe the person cohabited with its mother. So ki hava ma'ubra, even at the time when it was impregnated. Diyama Rava Vlad Hanugachas Aser. If you have a Vlad of a goring animal is Aser, says Rashi. Para Shinugcha Yisrael. Let's say you have a bull, let's say a para that gored a yid. Ukashimu Beres, while it was pregnant, is para, is a cow. Umes Vlada. And then the Vlad Umes Vlad the Apostle of Carbon. So we see that it's possible, right? The Vlad is possible for the carbon, so you can't use it. So not only when it comes to that situation, furthermore, the Gemara says he uvlada nagchu, because we say she and the Vlad, even the Vlad was part of the Negicha. Vlad hanirvas aser, he Vlad nirvu. It's the same thing, that doesn't matter that the you're watching it. You should have watched the mother also. The Gemara says you're right. Emi Yisrael hayim mishaman oisa Mishasha Naitra, from the time of its creation. It says Rashi, B'mei Ima, while this animal was pregnant, and how did it even know it was going to be a paraduma? But we were watching it even from that time. We're going to say, well, how do you know it's going to be red? Like, so maybe he was with this animal, the mother, before it conceived. Anything which is possible on the mizbeach, v'adasein mutaris. Their offspring are mutter afterwards. But Tani Lord, Rabbi Lezer oiser. Rabbi Lezer strict. So apparently it's just an issue. So hanichal Rava, Dierma Rava, Rav Nachman Machlokes Kishin Nirbu Kishin Mukdashin. Maybe the whole Machlokes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon is only that he, in the Masechtas Tamur, discusses this. The reason of Rabbi Lezer is because it's a bizayin that while it was already Kaidish, that it was Nirvu. So then the din is that the Vlad will also be Aser. Aval Kashin Chulin, if let's say it was Nirvu while it was Chulin, then it's certainly not an issue. Ella, Rav Huna Bar Chinadam, Rav Nachman Machlokes Kashin Nirvu Kashin Chulin. The whole Machlokes is even while this happened while it was Chulin, Aval Kashin Mukdashin Divrei Hakol Asur Ma'akum Meimor. So you still have the same kasha, that who says that this paradum is kosher because of its offspring, because of its mother. So Ema, okay, fine. According to that opinion, that again, it was being watched, watching the mother from the time it was conceived. So that much that far we're not going to be chayish. Amar Mar Yisrael. So again, you had to watch that. So Dilma Ravua Ima the Ima. Like we're not have to go back 100 generations of cows. But you're right, we watch the mother. Omer Mar Yisrael Hayim Mishaman Hayim Mishash Naitra. So Manayad Aidina. Just practically, how did you know this was going to become paraduma? How did you know this offspring will be red? So Rav Kahana Kais Edayim Mavirin Lefaneha. They passed this. They did some test. They took a red cup, and they passed it in front of it. Mishash Oilo at the time of Tashmish. Shaleh Zachar. So Ihachi Amai Domain Yikarin. So if this is the methodology of being able to just kind of like Yaakov, he put these sticks, the spotted and speckled sticks, and all of a sudden that's what the offspring were. So if you show them like redness or a red cup or wine, whatever, so l'chayra, that shouldn't be a big deal. They should all easily become a paraduma. So hoyel the truth is, it does work, but it causes it to become maybe mostly red or a little red. But for it to be a kosher paraduma, it has to be entirely red. So Maishna didhu. So I understand. So why then? No, it's just do it themselves. Amar Kahana b'muchzakais. So this says min mishpachos paras hayu with dama benasina muchzakos leil v'lados adumim b'maveres kos. This doesn't usually work, but dama benasina was known that this particular herd of cows produced redder animals, and therefore by doing this, it was more likely to become a paradum. Yosef Rav Yitzchak Navcha. Akila de Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So he went to the porch of Rabbi Yitzchak. Pasachad minayu. One of them opened up, and he said, "V'chein hayar belezer poisel b'chol hakarbanos kulon." So he said that this is what Rabbi Lezer said because he's chayish of l'revia. Therefore, because of that, you cannot purchase any of the animals from an akum, and it's possible for all karbanos. Another one continued to speak. Yomer Mayo Sibule Chavrul Rabbi Lezer. What would the colleagues of Rabbi Lezer respond? Kol Tzayin Keder Yikpatsu V'chulu the Goymer, as we said before. So this pasuk seems to indicate this pasuk in Sefer Yeshaya that all the karbanos can be taken even from an akum. Sarmahan Rabbi Lezer Kulam Gerim Gerurim Heim L'asad Lavai. So yeah, but that pasuk is talking about L'asad Lavai, and all of the people they're already going to be considered as gerim. They're not considered like idol worshippers, and therefore that's why we can accept karbanos from them. Omar Mar Yosef Omar of Yosef. So my kra. What is the pasuk to substantiate that in the future taka there's going to be conversions? Ki oz ehefich el amim safa beru yav gaimer. So this pasuk in Sephania says Ki oz later on efich el amim, the nations will turn to a safa brura, to a clear language, likru kulam b'shem Hashem l'abdai, that they're all going to serve Hashem. So therefore, yeah, fine, we could accept karbanos, but those karbanos are accepted only because the Oivik Chachamim there are no longer idol worshippers, and therefore we could accept their karbanos, and we're not chayish of Ravia. They're more righteous now. Okay, so v'dilman b'v'das kavim hu dahadabuhu. Understand, our issue is your chayish Ravia, but maybe this pasuk is just saying they're not going to worship idols, but maybe they are chayish at other things. It says at the end of the pasuk over there that they're going to serve shechem echad, which obviously means that they're going to adhere to all the mitzvos. Rav Papa Masti Hachi. That's how Rav Papa learned it. Rav Zvid Masti Hachi v'tuvayu Amri v'cheinu hayu Rabbi Lezer poisa b'chol karbanais. Rabbi Lezer tako apostles all karbanais. V'tuvayu Amri umayo isivel chaveri Rabbi Lezer. So what's the answer? Again, kol tzayin keder yikpatzu l'cha b'gaimer. So even though that's true that we do accept those animals as karbanos from akum, but that's lasad lavos. Again, Gemara says here, Rabbi Lezer klum gerim geruim heim lasad lavai. Umaykra. How do you know this? Because the pasuk again says ki yazef vaychel amim shtafa berura lukur klum mishem Hashem. So Rabbi Yosef Adilma but his chachavim who maybe they're only retracting from idol worship. Which means that they're going to adhere to all the mitzvahs. Okay, so but before, we're not allowed to accept animals as karbanos because we're chayish Ravia. So maybe Yom Moshe gam ata titin biadin izvacham va'oilais. So Moshe said when he was speaking regarding to Mitzrayim, to Paro, he said, "You also give to us animals oilais v'asino Hashem l'keinu." How could he accept those karbanos? How could he accept those things as karbanos? So the answer is Kadaman Torah Shani. This is actually question 9. How is it shaykh that Moshe said to Paro, Gamata Titam Yadenu, because it was before Matan Torah. So he was able to accept it then. So Tashma, Vayikach Yisro Chasim Moshe Oil Uzvachim Elokim. So Yisro Nami Kainam Matan Torah Havi. That was also before, which is not so clear whether or not it's in chronological order, that Parshas Yisro encountered Yisro, he spoke to Yisro, and then afterwards was Matan Torah. So then that would be a good answer if you would say that the Torah is written in that context in chronological order. So we continue to daf Chav Daled Rebbeis that Yisro came only after Matan Torah. So how can you accept karbanos from him? So Yisro Yisrael Zavan, because from Yisrael it was purchased. So that's what we said before. It wasn't directly from Yisro, and therefore it was actually from Yisrael. Tashmam, the pasuk says in Sefer Shmuel Aleph, "V'yomer Shaul So Shaul said, "Amaleki havium asher chamal al meitiv hatzayin v'habakar," that you were kind in accepting the sheep and the cattle. Why? Why would you have accepted these from Amalek? L'man zavoach Hashem elkecha, to be able to bring them as karbanos. So the question is, how would Shaul make this statement? That he showed compassion to Amalek, right? So he was able to bring these karbanos. But how was he able to do that? So my meitiv, demei meitiv. It doesn't mean the carbon itself, but it means demei meitiv. It's just referring to its value. Meitiv, why meitiv is an issue? Zvina. The reason why it's called meitiv is because it was something in which purchasers jump at. In other words, there are a high demand for these animals. Tashma. And then we have another pasuk. So over here in Shmuel Beis, it says, V'yomer Arvaina. So Arvaina said to David, Yikach v'yal adayni hamelach hatay beinav. You should do what's good in your eyes. Re'eh habakar lo'oila, the karbanos, the animals that I have as cattle, bring them as an oila. So how is that possible? V'yomer Arvaina el David, Yikach v'yal adayni hamelach es hatay beinav. Do what's good in your eyes. Yes, Re'eh habakar lo'oila v'ami morigim v'kli habakar lo'eitzim. So he's offering that these different things should be brought as wood for the mizbeach, and the animals as karbanos. How could David accept it from Arvaina? So Rav Nachman Arvaina ger tashav haya. He was not an oivik kachavim. He was a ger tashav, which is answer 9 as well. So my morigim, what does that say? It says the morigim also could be used, and the kli habakar for wood. So Amrula mita shel turbil. It's referring to a bed of turbil. My mita shel turbil is dikur kasa. It's referring to the that of a goat, like possibly the tooth of a goat, the daishin that it's used to thresh grain. Okay. Rav Yosef Mikra. So what is this pasuk? So we say hine, and this is a pasuk in Yeshaya. Hine samtich lemoyreg charutz chadash bal pefiyais todush harim, about threshing in the mountains. But tadak gvois kemoitz tasim. Fine. So kemoitz tasim, that it's like it's mites, it's the chaff of the grain. So meisvei v'yesa pada yisa oil Hashem. It says in Shmuel Aleph also, that says v'ha'agala ba el sdei Yehoshua be'es hashimshi v'tamoid sham v'shem even gedayla v'yavaku es atzi ha'agala es aparais. So we again see that they use these for karbanos. It says harash shahaisa. Yeah, that was only for the time. Typically, it's not allowed, but for harashah, it was allowed. This is question 7, TB7. This aparai shehevias ha'aron beplishtim. This is referring to the cows that brought the aron from the Pelishtim, because we know that in Sefer Shmuel, the Eli HaKohen, who was losing the battle, had the Aron brought into the battle, hoping that would help. They still lost. His kids were killed, and the Pelishtim took the Aron, but because they developed illnesses of hemorrhoids and the like, so they brought it back. And miraculously, the Paros, which pulled the Aron back, brought it to the right place. The question is, how is this acceptable, right? How is this allowed to be able to bring the Aron back? This was a rare exception that we allowed just under these circumstances to bring this as a carbon, but typically we certainly would not. So hachinam mistar, but oil in the cave miika. So it doesn't make sense. It says that what was brought as a carbon oila, and oila is always a zachar. So my kusha dilma bebamas yachid. Maybe it was allowed because it was on a bamas yachid. Could Rav Ada Barava, the Rav Ada Barava, menayin the oil in the cave she share bebamas yachid. How do we know that you could even bring a nekeva on a bamas yachid as a carbon oila? Because it's just because it's a carbon, it's a bamas yachid. It's not like by Mishkan Shiloi or in the base of Mikdash. So how do we know this? Shnemar, because the pasuk says in Shmuel Aleph, as we said, Yikach Shmuel Tlech Elev, that he took this nursing sheep echad yalo oila, and he brought as an oila. Now, how is that possible? How could he brought as an oila? Aveyalehu zachar mashma. So that mashma actually it was a male. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak v'yalaksiv, that it was brought. He brought it up, which means the nekeva was brought up, which again normally shouldn't be allowed, but it was allowed because it was on a bamas yachid. This is the answer for question TB7. Vesa parais shaviu es haaron miplishtim el oila. It was an oila. Eich yachal hakrim nekevu oila. So either hasha or because it was bamas yachid. Rabbi Yochanan says gvul yeshla pchusim ebas gimel shanim. So there was this gvul which was less than 3 years. Well, in Rashi, Harash Shah is mipnei nes shenas al yadein. It was a miracle. Shaviu haaron ma'atzma ve'in ish manhigim. That the animal just went directly without anyone directing it. And we said in Rashi the bamas yachid is mutter the hasim b'bamas yachidhu. The bama gedoyel b'noiv hayisabayis shah. Actually, it was in Shiloh and then it moved to Noiv. So this is not where it was done. Okay. All right. So Rabbi Yochanan says Rashi, Haidek Tani Le'el Loikmehem Carbon, that you can take them from a carbon. It's not simple that this applies to all animals, this potential allowance. But there was a boundary, says Rashi, for 3 years. So the first 3 years, it's not a problem because that if you would be engaged in reveal with your animal before it's 3 years old, it would become sterile, and therefore you could purchase it at that age. However, after 3 years, because even if you are revealed with this animal, you're not going to cause it to become sterile. That's when we're chayish. And maybe that's what it's. So Esvi Kohani Tiyofta. So we have all these different kashas. So Shaniluhu Chusm Baskim Shanim. You can always just say it was less than 3 years. So all these different karbanos that we allowed and all these psukim, you can just say it was less than 3 years. Tarshimam Vesa Parais Oyula Hashem. So again, how are they able to take these cows from the plishtim? So this is another answer actually. It was Pepachusa Mibashol Shanim. So it could be it was less than 3 years old. Maski Rabbi Huna Bari Rabbi Nasa named Cain Hainu Ves Benehim Kolu Bibayis. So the pasuk in Shmuel says V'yasu Anashim Cain, the men did this. V'yichu Shtei Paros Olos. They took these 2 cows as olos. V'yasrum Ba'agola. He basically broke up the wagon. V'yas Benehim Kolu Bibayis. So Chus Mebas Gimel Shanim, if it's less than 3 years, Mika Yalda. So it sounds like it gave birth. So what do you mean? How is it possible that, as the pasuk says, the es benehem, it's young? How is it possible? Vosanya parva chamor bebas gimel. Once it's 3 years old, vani lekan again. Parva chamor Mibas Gimel Vaday L'Koyin. Says Rashi, this is the Gemara in Bukhairis, that says if you purchase an animal from a Nachri and you don't know if it's gave birth before or not, right? So is it a Bechor, if it gives birth now, did it give birth before? So if you have an A's Bashinasa Vadi L'Koyin, so then it could definitely go to a Koyin, because less than a year, it's not able to give birth. After 1 year, a goat could give birth, but Para B'Chamor B'Sholosh Vadi L'Koyin. So we clearly see the first 3 years that there's no way it could have given birth. Mekan V'Elach Suffolk, says Rashi, Yim Yisera Al Bas Sholosh, it was more than 3 years, Haisa, Kishiolda Bebeis Yisrael, Havi Vlada Zes Suffolk B'Chor. You don't know. So therefore, what do we see from here? That any animal that's less than 3 years old, a cow, could not have given birth. It has to be at least 3 years old. And therefore, that fact that this pasuk says it's young, it must be talking about animals that are more than 3 years. And therefore, because of that, taka, this is a kasha, and therefore, it has to be that the reason why we allowed in the days of the Plishtim to bring these karbanos, these paros, is not because it was less than 3 years old. Those paros were more than 3 years old. But it was either because it was harashah, or maybe because it was on a bamas yach. Ad kan.